Good afternoon. I want to thank you for taking time to be with me today. This is the first time that a governor has been able to talk with state employees in this way. Over 700 state workers are gathered at 15 locations right now, allowing me to talk with you and to discuss state government and its role in Oregon's future. I would have liked to talk with every state employee, but modern technology hasn't come quite that far yet. As you know, this evening I will deliver my first State of the State address. I will talk about my vision for Oregon and state government's role in delivering that vision. And I will lay out my plans to reshape state government and to rebuild the trust between Oregonians and their government. This plan will affect all of us who work in state government, and I wanted to share the message with you first. This has been an incredible year with more debate and discussion about state government than any time I can remember. We are truly confronting some fundamental questions about government's role, its effectiveness, and its efficiency. So let me begin today by making clear that I know how important government services are to the Oregon that we believe in. We have jobs that matter so much, whether we're providing services to those in need or protecting our citizens, strengthening our economy, educating Oregonians, or protecting and managing our natural resources and environment. And we cannot reach our vision for Oregon without an effective government, a government that responds to the challenges with long-range solutions and not quick fixes. My belief in the quality and hard work of state employees has not changed, and my vision for Oregon has not changed since I became governor a year ago. But the way government works to meet that vision will change, because we all know that government is not an end in itself. It's the result of a contract with the people to achieve common goals. And it only works if that contract is built on a foundation of trust. Believing in that contract, I spent countless hours in 1991 in conversations with the people of this state. I asked Oregonians what they thought of our government, how they felt about the job we do, and about the services they want and need. And the messages were very clear. First, they have lost confidence in their political leaders. They don't believe that we hear them anymore. Well, I listened and I heard them. And I heard that Oregonians are frustrated. They don't think we spend their tax dollars well. They want a more efficient government. They want better delivered services. And yet, beyond that frustration and in spite of that distrust, Oregonians delivered another important message. They care about Oregon. They do want quality schools, and they believe in investing for a healthier future. They know that prevention must be a high priority, and they don't want to turn their backs on Oregonians in need. But the bottom line is that Oregonians want to know that their taxes, the ones they send us, are being spent well, and that they will make a real difference. And state workers aren't any different than other Oregonians in those feelings. Many of you who participated in the conversation said some of you seem to be the most frustrated of all about the duplication and about the inefficiencies and the out-of-date structure of state government. Working within the system, you know better than anyone that it can change for the better. When we asked in a survey last fall, 3 out of 4 employees said their agencies could make changes to deliver services better and more efficiently, and overwhelmingly employees said that it was a good idea to review state government operations. We can make improvements, and we will. Last June, I started a 2-part review of state government. I appointed a task force to examine state operations, including representatives from business and local government, labor and nonprofit organizations. And internally, state employees with citizen help reviewed state programs and priorities. I wanted the dual effort to look at our structure with new eyes and to recommend improvements. I have now received on my desk more than 250 proposals from those efforts to reshape state government. Obviously, some of those proposals need further development and input before I accept or reject them, but already I know that many are worth pursuing. Tonight, I will announce my first proposals for restructuring state government. We must restructure our government for 2 reasons. First, we will become as efficient as we can, focusing our efforts and working more effectively. We also must work this biennium to ease the transition toward a 1993-95 Measure 5 budget when many programs must face change, whether it's restructuring or elimination or downsizing. And even if additional revenues become available, many programs will still look much different in 2 years than they do now. And within my authority as governor, I will be able to act on some of the proposals immediately. Other changes I propose will require changing the laws and must have the legislature's support. I will introduce bold, far-reaching changes. I will propose restructuring, consolidations, and eliminations that will allow us to deliver services more efficiently and with greater focus. But as we become more efficient, we cannot simply force fewer workers to do more and more work. Employees are already working hard. Instead, we must restructure the work to make it more efficient, and we must stop doing some things that now take our time and effort. Nothing is a bigger waste of energy and money than trying to make a program more efficient if it's something we don't need to do in the first place. We will eliminate some agencies and boards and commissions, and we will consolidate to improve our systems. It will change the nature of your jobs, not just add to your workload. But the change will not stop there. After listening to Oregonians and after a year overseeing state government, I have come to believe that we can and must give Oregonians more service for their dollar. Government is going to work better. Government is going to work smarter. And let me be frank, government is going to work with fewer employees. About half of the jobs will be eliminated by reducing administration in all agencies across state government, regardless of the source of their funding. We will work to empower state workers, we will encourage teamwork, and allow frontline workers to make more decisions. We will do the job with fewer managers. But I won't cut only administration. The other half of the jobs will have to be eliminated mainly from agencies, finance, through the general fund. Those will be administrative jobs, and not all of them, though. Of necessity, some will come from our largest budget, human resources, education, and public safety. We will be selective, working to cause as little disruption as possible, and minimizing the impact on government services to Oregonians. Some of the jobs will be cut as people choose to leave state government. Some will be cut as people retire. Some of those will be cut from vacant positions that we will not fill. And some of those cuts mean that people will lose their jobs. I am telling you this now because I believe you deserve to hear it directly from me. This is a very difficult announcement for me to make. I know that you work hard and I know that you care tremendously. But these are not ordinary times. A train is coming at us and I must respond. If I don't act now, and if I don't begin the process, our problems will be even worse. For some Oregonians, this is simply a message of cuts and downsizing. For me, it is a message of people and families, and it is painful. During the next months, I will continue to look at other proposals and ideas to make state government work better. And as I make decisions to accept or reject each plan, I will announce those decisions publicly. But for all of us, the difficult choices are far from over. In a few days, we will begin putting our next 2-year budget together. I will instruct state agencies to prepare for a $1 billion reduction created by ballot measure 5. As that property tax limitation phases in over these 5 years, state government will face massive new obligations as the law shifts local school funding from the property taxes onto the shoulders of state government. The cost was $550 million in this budget. It will be an additional $1 billion in the 93-95 budget, and the cost will rise to $2.5 billion in 95-97. And state government must budget with the money we will have. Our budget will include the efficiencies I've announced and will announce tonight and more. And we will set priorities and we will focus the money on services that do the most to meet the pressing needs of Oregon. But let me be clear, all of our efficiency measures and our consolidations and our job reductions will not be enough. $1 billion is a lot of money. You should all understand the budget shortfall will just be too large to maintain all the services we now provide. That's where we stand now, and there are no guarantees that our revenue outlook will improve before the next legislative session. I will be honest with you as we work through these changes in state government and as we prepare to face the 1993-95 budget. I will not dodge the hard issues, and I will not shirk any responsibilities. This will be a tough time for all of us. But I want to keep the lines of communication open because we are facing change, and communication has never been so important. This is a very challenging and difficult time, and I hope that you can and will help me meet these challenges for state government and for Oregon. I've said many times before that public employees perform the hardest jobs in our society. I still know that's true, and that you are up to the challenge of implementing these major changes in how we do business. Tonight at 6:30, I will deliver my State of the State speech. That speech will be aired live on television, on KGW-TV, KATU, KSYS, KEZI, and KOPB-TV. It will also be aired on Oregon Public Radio stations. Tonight, I will give more of the details about my plans for our state government. But now, I want to answer your questions and hear your comments. As we begin talking with each other now, I want to give you just some short instructions to make this work more effectively. If you're going to talk or make a comment or ask a question, remember to push the button so that I can hear you. And if you wouldn't mind identifying yourself so I'll know who you are, maybe the agency you work with, whatever works for you. And then when you're done commenting or asking a question, remember to let go of the button so that I'll be able to respond. If you see me do this, it simply means, would you wrap up and give some other people a chance to comment and me a chance to respond. So I'm ready to begin this, and we'd like to start at Blue Mountain Community College and see if you have some questions there or some comments you'd like to share with me. Blue Mountain, are you with us? Well, let me pick another site. Oh, there they are. Okay, good. Have you got someone there who would like to make some comments or has a question?
Haven't gotten any response yet.
Okay. Okay, well, maybe we'll go to another site and then we'll come back to you. How about Chemeketa Community College in Salem? Can we call on you? Chemeketa? Well, now this system, I know.
We're here.
Okay.
Collecting our thoughts.
Okay.
We have one person who would like to make a comment.
Okay, that's fine. Let's start with that.
I'm June Pierce. I'm from Fairview Hospital and Training Center. You know, it's been in the news. What do you have in store for us? Can't you tell us right now?
Well, one of the things I don't want to do right now is to give you specifics about either decisions I've not finished or those that I'm going to announce tonight. But one of the things right now I'll tell you is that almost everything remains on the table. Some things will be announced tonight, and one of the reasons for going over the other decisions and not announcing them all at once is because obviously you can't examine that many suggestions all at once. So I will literally be working through these one at a time and examining them, and then I will announce when an idea is one I think we ought to move forward with and give people a chance to give me some input before I do that. Or if I think there's an idea that just isn't right for Oregon, I'll announce that as well. Okay? Let me move to Lane Community College in Eugene. Are you there at Lane Community College?
Yes, we are, Governor Roberts. The question is, will there be in place some system before job cuts happen for transferring to other state, city, or county agencies those employees displaced?
We're actually going to begin tomorrow working with the implementation of the effect on individual employees. And obviously, as you know, in state government, people have some ability to transfer from agency to agency, and in some cases that will be the situation. So we will be working tomorrow about the process to make this as orderly and as humane as we can, and to really try to work with individual employees. We had a number of calls today already in the personnel office attempting to find out how the process will work, and we will be literally sharing that with you as it becomes very clear how we need to move next. And so we're going to try to make this as open a process as we can and give people a chance to look at where other options might be available to them, not necessarily just in state government, but as you mentioned, there may be some local government options as well. Okay, let me go back now and over across the other side of the mountains to Central Oregon Community College in Bend. Have you questions or comments from Bend?
Yes, I'm Dale Wagner from ODOT. I wondered if you have any money that's being allocated to retrain these people that are being eliminated. Is there anything in the budget for that?
Well, obviously we're working in a current budget right now, and there's not a lot of training dollars in there, but there are other training dollars available just as they're involved. For instance, if you looked at the wood products industry, some of the training dollars that are available for employees on the outside of government, some of those may translate to be able to help some of our employees as we look at these steps that we're going to be taking. And I think the last thing we want, whether we're talking about state government employees or whether we're really talking about private sector employees, is to have people find themselves out of a job without the state being willing to really see how we can help in that process. And so the Department of Employment and other agencies that we already have will be actively preparing to help with state employees. Let me now try Portland Community College in Portland. Do you have questions or comments from there?
Yes, Governor Roberts, we have at least two questions,
Okay.
and here's the first one.
Okay.
Governor Roberts, Jane Gordon from the Oregon Health Division. There are certainly two ways of looking at the process of consolidation, and the one that you seem to be proposing is to make fewer but very large agencies. My concern is that in other environments, it becomes more difficult for people to get the service they need and access the government the larger it gets. There's a lot of theory that it's better to have more but smaller agencies. How do you reconcile those two differences?
Well, one of the problems with more but smaller, though it has some merit to it, is that you really have a lot more management and administrative costs when you do that. The other thing that we found in looking at agencies like Human Resources is you begin to draw what you might think of as artificial lines. A citizen, a child, a family comes in for help, and we send them department to department, to division to division, rather than saying, here's a family that needs help, or here's a child that needs help. How can this department or this agency help without getting caught with department lines that really are not necessarily an effective way to deliver service? A lot of people who are listening to the consolidation ideas are assuming this is just an attempt to create sort of the mega agency, the large agency. What we're doing is talking much more about how you consolidate efforts within agencies so that the departments don't become barriers, but in fact help us to deliver the service. So my intention is not assuming that bigger is better, but that consolidation and cooperation may be not only cost effective, but if we do it correctly, can deliver better services. Oh, you had a second question?
Good afternoon, Governor Roberts. I want to thank you for considering us and for asking us to take part in your plan.
Thank you.
My name is Mary. I work for the Department of Justice for the Support Enforcement Division. We collect child support for children and mothers who are on welfare, and we establish paternity. We generate over $20,000 every biennium. We receive 66 cents on every dollar we spend. We receive that from the federal government. We also receive 99 cents on the dollar when any dollars that we spend for blood tests and for automated equipment. I would like to know if our department, even though we generate such a huge amount of money for the state and for the taxpayers, why would there be cuts in a department like that?
Well, it is very difficult, even in a revenue-generating agency, if we look at the ability for us to, I mean, if it's 66 cents on the dollar, that means that you have a percentage of that dollar that's also cost. And so it's like the Department of Revenue. If we could get more money to the Department of Revenue, they could collect more back taxes. But you can't spend what you don't have. And so in agency after agency, we know that sometimes the agency would not only deliver better services, but could serve more people better and in some cases create a long-term cost savings in terms of prevention. but you can't spend it if you don't have it, and so that's what we're looking at in a lot of very well-managed agencies and in a lot of programs where the choices are very, very difficult because they generate federal dollars or other kinds of dollars. So you're right about the analysis, but our problem is we just don't have enough money to go around to do what we need to do, and we've got to start somewhere. Let me move now to Southwestern Oregon Community College in Coos Bay. Can you tell me if you have some questions or comments from Coos Bay?
Yes, thank you, Governor. This is Steve with the Department of Agriculture. Question I have is, do you have a timeline on when these consolidations and changes will be implemented, and when will agencies have an idea of how many positions and so forth they will have to head into the 93-95 biennium?
Okay, let me see if I can answer that for you. One of the things that will happen with the consolidations is there's some things that can be done administratively, and where we can do that and begin to build those efficiencies, we will try to do that. But in cases where it's going to take a legal change, where the legislature is going to act on it, obviously we can't move forward till we get legislative action. So we will make clear what the process is for doing that and what their proposals are, and then that will give agencies planning time to look at not only the personnel involved, but also the delivery of services as we make changes and consolidations. So some of these agencies will have a while to get the design in place as we put together the budget and look at its effect on the budget, and then look at the proposals that will come to the legislature. So there's several pieces working at the same time. The advantage is we know the change is coming and we're going to move in that direction. I think we can do better planning and really affect employees in the most positive way possible as we make these changes. Let me move now to Mount Hood Community College out in Gresham. Do you have questions or comments from Gresham?
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, be sure you're pushing your button down.
I work at the Oregon Liquor Control Committee. And my question is, I would like to know if the management cuts that you're speaking of would come solely from restructuring, or would they also come from, say, management analysis or studies that would show where management cuts can be made that would still have no effect on state services?
Well, we're going to look at every management position that exists in state government. We're going to look for places that were probably overmanaged, if you'll pardon the expression. We're going to look for places where that management position may not affect delivery of online services and see where we can find those cuts there. And we will look for places that the management process might be consolidated. And obviously, anytime you consolidate something, you're going to need less management to really deliver the final product. So it's really going to be a very broad look at those management positions, some of which has begun to be looked at already, and some which we'll be working with the agencies on as we move forward. Let me move now to I think I did that. Well, how about Jackson Educational Service District in Medford? Can we go down to Jackson ESD?
Yes, Governor Roberts, we have two questions here, and here's the first one.
Good afternoon, Governor.
Hi.
My name is Florence, and my question is this. Oregon must replace money that the schools will be losing because of Measure 5. Oregonians think the state government is overmanaged. Do people anywhere consider or ask perhaps if the schools are overmanaged and if school administrations could be trimmed a tiny bit? Thank you.
That's a very good question, and one of the ones that we've been talking with a number of governments about, not just school districts and community colleges, but also cities and counties. And if you look at even the management question, the administration question, but if you looked at any part of the efficiency question, it doesn't make very good sense to only do that efficiency in state government. I mean, the voters and the citizens are upset because they think we're not spending their money very well. I don't think they care which level of government that waste in their mind comes from, but they want to know that every place government is operating, it's operating efficiently and effectively, and they're getting their dollars worth. So I think to stop at state government and say we're the problem would be less than realistic. So I think we clearly have to look at all of those levels of government, and I'm hoping that local government and schools across the state will do the same kind of hard look that we're doing for those efficiencies and that administrative question. That's a good question. And you had another question at Jackson ESD?
Thank you, Governor Roberts. My name is Marie. I'm with AFS. You mentioned not filling vacancies. Does this mean vacancies as they occur regardless of whether they're management or line staff, regardless of how vital these line staff vacancies are?
It's a good question. It probably means I didn't say it very clearly. If we had just done one of those flat employee freezes or hiring freezes, we, I think, would have made some very bad choices. And so when we're looking at not filling vacancies, whether they're current vacancies or whether they're future vacancies, I think we have to look where they are and what they do. And if we just did a freeze, I think we would make some very bad mistakes in terms of delivery of services. For instance, if we're dealing with a child abuse program, as an example, and we've got caseworkers working out there, and one caseworker leaves because they're retiring and one caseworker leaves because they're having a baby, and we've got 2 less caseworkers in a program that's already understaffed, to freeze there would not, in my estimation, make very good sense. So what we're trying to do is to look at those positions that are vacant now and ones that will occur and say, are these ones we must have to do our job and to deliver services in vital areas, or are these places we probably don't need to fill this position? So we're going to try to be very selective about how we do this job in terms of making sure that we do the least harm while we have to make these changes. Good question, though. Let me now move to Oregon Institute of Technology in Klamath Falls and see if they've got questions or comments there.
Good afternoon, Governor Roberts from OIT in Klamath Falls.
Hi.
We have 2 questions for you.
Okay.
First one.
Good afternoon, Governor. Okay. My name is Chuck, and I work with the Oregon State Military Department.
Okay.
A lot of our programs are funded by the federal government. How will your austere programs handle these type of positions?
Well, one of the things we'd like to do is to do as little harm to federal dollars coming in to the state, to cut programs here, our match money, if you will, and not allow federal money to come in, is something we would choose not to do. But if you look at where administration occurs in an agency, as an example, I mean, if we're over-administrated, it shouldn't matter where the dollars come from. Efficiency ought to be efficiency ought to be efficiency, and whether they're fees or whether they're general fund dollars or whether they're federal dollars, the efficiency should still be there. And it would be like us saying, well, we're going to be efficient here in Oregon, but it doesn't matter if the federal government is efficient. Well, maybe we can set some example for the federal government and how efficiently we handle the dollars that do come from the federal government. But we're going to try to be careful not to make cuts that really mean that we turn away millions and millions and millions of federal dollars that, quite frankly, Oregonians pay and we don't get very much of our share back on. So that's a good question. You had something else in Klamath Falls that you wanted to share?
Governor Roberts, my name is Tracy and I work for Adult and Family Services. There's been a lot of information on the news media today regarding the State Archives building and the cost of the carpet being $127 a square yard and $500 for a light fixture. How can that be justified on cutting state positions and money for programs when 4 square yards of carpet cost more than a family of 3 live on all month on welfare?
It can't. And that is absolutely accurate. And it's one of the things that tells you, let me give you an example of this. If you looked at the Archives building as a project, a building project, you would see that that Archives building came in under budget. We would say that's good. That's how a building ought to be built, under budget. That's very good. But what happens between there and the middle of that budget is that a lot of the detail of that budget was looked at by people who made decisions saying this is under budget. And it's regrettable when we don't find a better way to look at the individual decisions made in that. And I think that Phil Kiesling, the Secretary of State, is going to have the Audits Division right now look at that process. Why is it that that can happen, particularly in a time like this, that can happen without some sensitivity and some reality check on it? So as the Audits Division in the Secretary of State's office looks at that question, I think we're going to find not just that Archives building, but a lot of the building projects and other things we do, we say, well, this is under budget, and we should be saying, even under budget, have you made the right choices about how you spend dollars? And I think that's the validity we need to bring to that process, and I think it will come because this is a new way to look at the question of buildings, and I think it's important. You had another question from there?
Yes, Governor. My name is Alan Schwalke. I'm with Oregon Institute of Technology. First question is a multi-part question. Is the option for sales tax still being considered? Also, what kind of cuts do you see as far as for higher education? Are we back talking about school closure? In regards to that, too, because of the faculty members being under a different type of contract situation, it gets kind of hairy around here when they're really not knowing where they're standing as far as schools opening and closing or departments being eliminated.
Okay, let me see if I can remember 3 questions at a time without a pencil. Let me first of all tell you that I recognize the special situation you have with higher education, particularly faculty members, because of the year notice requirement in the way that higher ed faculty positions are handled. That's a special kinds of concern. In terms of higher ed generally, there is no question that when we reach 93, 95, that we cannot make anywhere near the cuts we need in state government without affecting every one of the major budgets, which obviously includes human resources and education and public safety are really big ones, and certainly higher ed in that position. With regard to the sales tax, it really isn't the time yet to get focused on an individual tax or an individual issue of tax reform. What we've got to do is to deal with this issue that's in front of us right now, which is those efficiencies, making sure we do the best job we can do for our taxpayers as we use their dollars. And I think we've got to rebuild that confidence that they need to have in their government before they're going to give us any kind of new tax change. So I'm going to focus on building that confidence and in bringing that efficiency into government and doing our job better. And then I think we can look to our voters and say, well, now are you ready to talk to us about a more efficient and effective tax system as well? And I think that's really, it's just not time yet. I think we'll move there eventually, but I don't think we're ready for that yet. Okay, let me move now to Lynn Benton Community College in Albany.
Yes, we have several. Contracting out of state programs is one of the options being considered. Many of your conversations were with civic leaders who could benefit from contracting out. Isn't that a conflict of interest?
Well, when I did the conversation, I talked with over 10,000 Oregonians, and the issue of contracting out or prioritization or however you describe that came up over and over and over again. So it's not just something that a given task force or group has brought to the attention, and it's not a new issue. In the years I was on the school board for 10 years, that issue came before the school board, and at the county it came there. So it's not a new issue in Oregon brought by some group that has something to gain or lose by it. So the issue with contracting out, and it's always a hard issue, I think, is to say, is this something we do better than anybody else can do it, more efficiently, more effectively, and is there a reason for it to be done in government instead of someplace else? And so I think we constantly have to reevaluate that question, and there's some things that we contract out in state government now. There always have been. There always will be. And so I think there's nothing wrong with looking at that issue as we look at a number of the things we do in state government. Quite frankly, I think there's some of them we do better than anybody else can do them. But there may be cases where that's not true. Let me just take one more question from your site, and then we'll try to get back to you. I want to be sure I get a chance to reach some of the other sites we've not talked to yet.
Beverly Caldwell, OSU Student Health Center. Are you thinking of taking the retirement monies, which were deducted from the state employee salaries, and putting the money in the general fund?
One of the things you'll notice if you listen to all the comments going on right now from the task force and the program review and the employee suggestion committees and all of those groups, nobody has ever talked about raiding any dollars that were dedicated for those kinds of purposes, whether they were talking about the workers' comp fund or whether they were talking about dollars in retirement. So raiding funds has been something that simply hasn't been raised, and I don't think it's on anybody's list as a way to solve any problems. Let me move now to Treasure Valley Community College. I understand they're online now. Let me see if I can reach them.
Well, we hope to be online, Governor.
Good.
We have 2 questions for you.
Okay.
Hello, I'm Officer Harris from Powder River Corrections.
Hi.
And I'm curious, is there anything you can tell us at this time about changes in the Department of Corrections, specifically the possibility of elimination of minimum security facilities?
Those decisions on corrections have not been made yet in regard to anything right now. There is no question as we move forward to the 93-95 budget and corrections takes its share of the hit that there will be changes. I don't know what those changes are going to be yet. I know that they're not changes that any of us are probably looking forward to, but at this point in time we're not talking about closing facilities at Powder River or any of the other facilities in this budget period. But clearly those decisions will have to be discussed as we look at how we deal with the real heavy responsibilities that come to public safety, both state police and corrections, as part of the budget that we'll deal with in 93-95. Other questions? I think you had one other one from there before we moved on to another location.
Yes, this is Dave with the State Highway Department. I have a two-part question.
Okay.
First question is pertaining to what you were saying earlier tonight, that half of the jobs want to be omitted, no matter what agency. Now, is that jobs employees-wise, or is that half the managers?
We were looking at the management coming across agency lines regardless of funding. In the other area that's non-administrative, we would be much more likely to be looking at the large agencies because that's where the money is and that's where the positions are. Basically, general fund agencies would be much more likely to be looked at. Okay, by the way, seeing him from Highway reminded me of something, and I just want to share it with you. One of the things we've had working in this process since we began last summer was an employee suggestion hotline, and we got some really interesting ideas from there, and I think there are more coming, I hope so, but one I'd share with you because it came out of Highway, and it was an issue of the engineering section of Highway and the maintenance section of Highway. And one of the things this highway maintenance person brought to our attention was that oftentimes the engineering department that decides where plantings are going to go and that kind of thing will plant trees, which we think are great and they look wonderful on the highway, but they plant them so close together that you can't run the mowers between them. A maintenance person would know enough not to do that. So that's one of those places where we bring the highway engineers and the maintenance people together to make better choices. So I think that's the kind of suggestion we're excited about. And I'd like to remind you right now, so I don't forget, that hotline is still open if you've got suggestions, and it's 378-2229. So we need to hear from you if you've got other ideas that really make logical sense and would make good changes for state government. Let me now go to Clackamas Community College in Oregon City. We haven't called on them yet to see if they've got some questions or comments.
Yes, we're here, and we have a couple of people with questions.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Governor. My name is Rhonda. I'm with the OLCC.
Okay.
I transferred from the private sector to the OLCC 2 years ago for 5 reasons. I wanted a livable wage. I wanted a good health care benefit package. I wanted a solid retirement plan. And I wanted some job security and a job that had some upwards mobility and a chance for growth. Now that we're doing away with all 5 of those things, how do you intend to keep and attract quality state workers?
Well, I think that makes an awful lot of assumptions about what we're doing. I don't think at this point in time anybody said we're doing away with any of those. We're talking about the difference in the number of employees, but nobody's talked or made any decisions about those things yet. And obviously, I mean, if I were just going to jump on the bandwagon and say, let's cut employees' cost, I would have done it during the last budget period. One of the things I said last time, I'm not going to balance the budget on the backs of state workers. And I didn't. And so I think to assume that because something's been discussed or talked about, that it's done, I think is really not fair. So we're looking at those things. I don't have to tell you that a major cost in state government is employees and the cost related to employees. So we're trying to look at that with fairness and honesty and with the understanding that quality employees don't come for free and we don't expect them to. But we have to look at all of those issues, and they have to be on the table as we deal with a $1 billion loss in the next budget. We've got to deal with what we have before us, and I can't make magic out of that. So let me move now to Douglas Educational Service District in Roseburg. Have you got some comments or questions there?
Yes, we have two questions.
Okay.
Governor Roberts, my name is Mary Sandbach. I work for the Judicial Department, and we would like to know specifically if you and your task force are planning to undedicate our PERS funds to aid in the budget problems, and specifically, why is all of this being directed at state employees when obviously the ballot measure 5 was voted in by a majority of Oregonians?
Well, a majority of Oregonians voted in ballot measure 5. And if you remember what it did, it looked at local property taxes and said, we're going to begin lowering that property tax rate at the local level where schools and community colleges, cities, counties are affected. But it also said for the portion that's being eliminated for schools and community colleges, we will pick up that amount and we will make state government pick up that loss at the local level. So schools and community colleges are less negatively affected. So when the measure was passed on a statewide basis, it affected cities and counties and school districts and community colleges, but the major hurt, the major cost, and the major loss came at state government's table. So we have to deal with what we have, and we would hope that local government and schools would do some efficiencies as well. But I'm the governor of this state, and I have as my responsibility state government budgets. And I must respond to the place where my first responsibility lies, and it is with state government. And we must do the job that we have to do. It's not because we want to do it. It's not because it's fun or pleasant. It's not something I want to do. I don't mind doing the efficiencies, and I think that's good for us. And I don't mind examining better ways to do things. But some of this is not going to be fun, and it is going to be a very difficult time. But the people of Oregon laid this at our lap, and we will have to find ways to make those changes. Now, I want to be sure I haven't forgotten anybody, so if you don't mind me reading, I'm going to say who I've missed here. I think we never got back to Blue Mountain Community College over in Pendleton when we missed them the first time. Let's see if we can bring them in right now.
Yes, Governor, this is Al Bell from EOCI.
Hi.
You never were very clear, or maybe I missed it, on when we could expect these cuts to take place. Do we have some lead time so we can get prepared?
Well, many of the cuts that we're going to have to do, that we're going to need to do are related to the 93-95 budget. Many of those things we're talking about, and many of the changes and consolidations will have to be done after the legislature's met because I can't do them administratively. There are some things that will happen before that, but the majority of the things that we're focusing on will be things that we'll have to do in the next budget. But what I don't want to do is to wait till we come to that cliff at 93-95 and sort of stand with my blinders on for the next year and a half and not respond to how serious the problem is that we're going to have to face. So if we can begin to focus on what it takes us to transition into that change so that we have less real hurt when we drop off the cliff, and we have made some of those changes now, I think we're better served as people who work for state government, and I think the people we deliver services to are better served. And I think that's what I'm working for, is to try to see if we can begin to recognize those changes are coming and respond to them now and not wait until the legislature's in session to deal with them. Let me now see. I'm trying to be sure we have... Oh, Rogue Community College. I haven't called on them down in Grants Pass yet.
Hi, this is Peggy. I'm with the volunteer program. I have several questions from the state agencies.
Okay.
The first one is, do you anticipate using the golden handshake offer during the next biennium?
I don't know the answer to that question yet. It's something that was discussed during the last legislative session. I think there are obviously places where retirement, early retirement would serve both the employee and state government, but we haven't made any final decisions on that. I think it's something we'll continue to be discussed, how we deal with maybe encouraging some retirements, but I can't give you a specific answer to that yet. You want to do another one there from Rogue Community College before I try to pick up some sites that haven't had a chance to ask a question yet?
Thank you.
Okay.
Since so many Oregonians are going to be unemployed, what steps can you take to untangle the red tape, regulations, and taxes that frustrate and deter small businesses starting up?
Well, actually, the state of Oregon has done a remarkable job in the last 3 or 4 years of how we deal with small businesses. The small business assistance centers on the community college campuses have helped. The Economic Development Department has consolidated some of the processes, and there are other things that are literally being designed now to move toward doing that better and better. One of the things that should be encouraging for all of us, if you looked around the whole nation right now, Oregon's general economy is in pretty good shape. We've come through this last couple of years better than most states in the nation, so we're doing a lot of job creation in Oregon now, good jobs, and more of them coming. The Economic Development Department and the regional strategies programs all over the state have really helped us to create new jobs, and a lot of those are created not with a big, sort of mega corporation coming in, but rather with looking at a lot of those small new businesses and expansions of businesses already here to see if we can't create jobs within that area. And I think, for instance, some of the new secondary wood products jobs being created are relatively small firms using product in Oregon and creating new good quality jobs. So I think we're fortunate to have that base and to know we can build on that. And small businesses are the majority of the businesses in this state, and the better we help them operate, the more jobs we have in Oregon. Let me look now. I'm not sure whether I got Blue Mountain Community College yet. I don't think we got a question from them yet. Blue Mountain?
Yes.
Okay.
My name is Lori Skippers. I'm from the Motor Vehicles Division.
Okay.
I have 2 questions. And we do have someone else that has another question.
Okay, we'll try to take 2 then.
One of them is, my understanding is that government has a responsibility to ensure the welfare of its citizens, but one of the main areas or a major agency is our safety, public safety.
Mm-hmm.
So that agency that I know of with OSP has been cut substantially in the last 10 years, going from 21 troopers on a road to 9 in a 10-year period of time. You're going to cut that type of agency more. What kind of public safety are we going to have?
Yeah. Let me be, I'm not saying that we're necessarily cutting public safety more. What I was saying, if you looked at all of public safety, which is Oregon State Police and the entire Corrections Department, they're a pretty large wedge in the state government pie. And when you start making major cuts in state government, education, human resources, and public safety are the biggest parts of the state budget. So anytime you cut, they're going to get cuts because you can't cut state government without hitting those 3 major areas. Unfortunately, those are the places nobody wants you to cut because we know how vital those services are. We did create some new positions in Oregon State State Police last legislative session, and a portion of those have been filled, and the rest are still have not been filled yet. But we did create some new positions. I'm not quite certain, but I think it was 49 in this last budget. One of the difficulties we have with the Oregon State Police is that we used to fund them on our gas tax. And when the citizens of the state decided they weren't going to fund anything but highways on that gas tax, they took out the state police, and now they're in a situation of competing with every other agency in state government in order to fund them. And it's really affected our ability to patrol our highways in Oregon, and it really is a major concern of mine that I hope we can maybe reverse one of these days. You had
my next question has to do with DMV.
Okay.
And that's that every biennium we are inundated with new laws or new programs that we have to implement. If we are no longer going to be able to provide certain services, then it seems to me like we need to make some kind of understanding that the legislators have to be careful about what kind of laws they pass, because we're not going to have the people or the money or the funds to support these types of programs. 101 different bills went through that affected my agency this last year. That's a lot, and with no additional workforce. Is there going to be something done about that?
Well, I'm not sure I can control the Oregon legislature. I can't control the bills that are introduced, and I can't always control those that are passed. I can occasionally veto those that I think are unrealistic in terms of state government or for some other reason. But I think there's no question that some of the things that the legislature looked at with DMV, one of them being the voter registration. Now, I know that DMV wasn't particularly excited in some cases about getting that operation, but it has proven all over the nation in states that are starting to use it that they're getting more registered voters and they're participating more easily, and people are keeping up their voter registration. Now, whether that's a positive or negative in your eyes, I think that it is one more way for us to say it matters that people register and it matters that they vote, and Oregon government is going to make it easier. What we need to understand is each of those things take more time and they take more workers and they don't come for free. So we obviously we're going to be emphasizing that very strongly with the 1993-95 legislature as they look at their budgeting process, and it will be reflected in the budget that we submit to the legislature as well. Let me move to another site. I'm trying to see if there's somebody...
One more question.
Okay. Why don't I skip your question for just a moment? I don't mean to do that, but I think there may be a couple of places I've not called on, and I'm trying to see if there is one. I don't...
Clatsop Community College?
Clatsop. That's right. I haven't talked to Clatsop. Can you come aboard with any questions or comments you have from Clatsop?
Thank you, Governor Roberts. This is Bill Atkoff from the Oregon Department of Forestry. Could you explain your position on the span of control issue between supervisors and how many that they're going to be allowed to supervise under this?
One of the things that we've discovered as we've taken a really close look at state government is the span of control issue deals with how many workers you basically have for how many managers or how many administrators. And we found in Oregon that it was very high, the proportionality. We had about, if I remember correctly, 1 manager for every 6 employees. And that is unusually high management or administrative level. And what we're looking about is moving that, I don't know what the numbers might be, but hopefully over the next couple of years to look at something closer to 1 in 12. I don't think you do that overnight, but I think we need to look at how we can do that better. That's a pretty unusual span of control, a manager for every 6 employees. So that's what we're trying to evaluate. And obviously, with less of that management, you save dollars and still deliver services, and that's what we're trying to look at. Okay. Is there anyone else out there that I have not called on? I should have marked these as I went through, and I forgot to do that. Is there anyone listening in any of the audiences that we haven't called on your site yet? Okay, then let me go back over. I think Blue Mountain Community College had another question. We don't have too much longer left, and I recall that they had another question. Let's see if we can go back and pick that up.
Hey, this is Jerry Wood with the Employment Division. And when there's cuts, we saw it with the federal government, they cut inordinately in the field offices where people are delivering services and not in their central offices. Is there going to be any guidelines to prevent that?
It's really clear if you look at what it is we're supposed to be doing in state government is we're supposed to be delivering services. So whether we're talking about caseworkers or probation officers or whether we're talking about people delivering services in field offices, I think a very high priority must be placed on that delivery of services. There's also no question that one of the things that's done at the major administrative office is that, they help us bring in federal dollars by writing the grants that bring in the dollars that translate out to those field offices. They help with the major policy decisions and the work that must be done at that level. So obviously we need both arms of that operation, but the focus on the delivery of services has to be remembered as we look at any kind of changes we're making. And because in the end, if we cut delivery of services, we not only hurt state government, but in the end we also hurt Oregonians who are there hoping and expecting and needing those services. So I have a very strong focus in my way of looking at how we do this, and I know that that has been true as we worked with the executive branch in beginning to look at these changes. Now, I think that...
This is Peggy at Road Community College.
Okay.
We have another question for you.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Did you have any idea that ballot measure 5 would cause these problems when you appointed 2 of your people to help get it passed when you were Secretary of State?
Wait a minute. I don't know where you got that. I fought ballot measure 5 all the way through the process. I never supported ballot measure 5. All during the campaign, I told people it would be wrong for Oregon, that we would damage our future. So I don't have any idea why you think I appointed 2 people to help get ballot measure 5 passed. Can you tell me where that information comes from? I'm sort of startled.
Hold on, we have a response for you.
Come on. Hurry up. We're using valuable
Mrs.
time.
Roberts, this is Lisa with the DMV in Grants Pass.
Yeah.
And I'm the one that questioned, and the reason I wanted to know that is because on our voters pamphlet, when that was voted in, it said 2 people from the Secretary of State's office were appointed by you.
Okay, let me explain. The law says that when the explanations are written for the voters pamphlet, that 2 people from the Secretary of State's office are appointed to help write the explanations. So the Secretary of State has responsibilities for all the explanations and all of the ballot measure material that goes in. And so, believe me, that did not reflect my views on Measure 5, and I was very clear all the way through the process that I opposed ballot Measure 5, and I did not believe it was good for Oregon. So if you can straighten that out, if people believe I was supporting it, it was quite the contrary, and I think public record will show that I was actively in opposition to it. But I thank you for giving me a chance to clarify that. Another question is pressing out there. We've only got about 4 minutes left, and I want to get 2 or 3 real quick questions in here if we can.
This is Bedford.
Okay.
This is Ken, who's an electrical inspector.
No, 2, would you take a moment to answer them?
Okay, let's do Medford real quickly.
Why, since the building codes agency is self-supporting, must we have to cut services that are necessary?
Well, most of the services we deliver in most of the agencies are necessary. Some of them are, if you call self-supporting, meaning they're fee-supported or the fees come from someplace else. But the citizens of the state want to see efficiency. The type of fee that comes in is not necessarily their concern. Is how many people work for state government and how much money is in the overall budget, not just the general fund budget. The other thing is that we spend general fund dollars doing things that are fee-supported. Let me give you an example. If I fill boards and commissions that have thousands of people on them, I have full-time general fund people on the governor's staff who help me find those people to fill those boards and commissions. We also have legislative sessions where the Senate decides whether they're going to confirm the people I've appointed. So general fund dollars are spent every time we deal with things, even fee-supported agencies. So I think the major question is, are there things that state government just doesn't need to do? Could that same operation, I'm not talking about yours specifically, but could an operation that we're now spending any kind of government dollars on be done on the outside of government better than we do it in terms of things like a board or commission that might better be and more effectively work without our having our involvement in it in state government? So that's the reason a lot of those things are being examined, is to see whether those proposals make sense not only for the industry that we're working with or the commodity commission or the health service, but rather does it make sense to do it in government or outside of state government. Let me see if I can take one more question. We need to wrap up here. Our time is running.
Governor Roberts?
Yes.
This is John Alexander with AFS in Medford, and I worked as a coordinator and facilitator in your conversation with Oregon.
Thank you.
And I was wondering, I was impressed by the whole process that occurred, and I felt that it went a long way towards bringing some people back into the political process that's been dwindling over the years. What's the next step in terms of using EdNet to continue that?
Well, obviously we're using it today, and I think it's because I'm so convinced it's a wonderful tool now for all of us. But as we move forward in the next months, I think it's likely that we will use this tool again. And I don't know whether it's going to be in designing a new tax structure or in evaluating how we're doing as we go through each of these steps over the next months. But I have no question that that process brought the government and the people of the state together like nothing we've tried to ever do in the state. And I want to continue to use it because I think it's one way, just like I'm talking to you today, that we have a chance to communicate that I couldn't do any other way. I couldn't send you a videotape and do this. I mean, there's just no way to do this, and particularly the fact that I can communicate in every corner of the state at the same time, I think shows what an effective tool it is, whether I'm sharing and listening to state employees or whether I'm talking to citizens outside of government employment. So I thank you for helping with that. And there were a lot of you, I think, who are listening today who may have been participants in not only being in the conversation, but helping us make that work. And I want to not forget the other group today, those people who helped us facilitate today, and tell you how much I appreciate your taking the time and helping make this work today. This is a hard time for us, and I think we will be struggling through it for a number of months and maybe years to come. But What I don't want to do in this process is to leave you out of the process, and we'll work to take some very difficult choices and make them work as well as we can and as humanely as we can over these next months.